Welcome to Fast Pace, the new growth, leadership and management podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Dean Mackie. We wanted to peel back the layers on what happens in the world of fast-paced real estate agencies, from new leadership models to the management challenges we all face each day. This is about a new era in the estate agency sector. Rapid changes to business models, service lines, remuneration and growth present the greatest opportunities that we've ever seen. Sit back, get inspired, grow your skills and reimagine what's possible with Fast Pace. Every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Josh Phegan Digital. The core of growing any great real estate practice is to make sure that you've got some really simple rules, things that you know that actually work. And when you get it in one location and you can make it scale across multiple locations, that's a really good thing to understand. Dean, inside of any business, there are some things that we just know make it work. What are some of the simple rules that you think of straight away that make a big difference in the way that you go to work inside of an organisation?
Thanks, Josh. Look, I think that for me, this is a headspace frame of reference type sort of idea. When you say simple rules, there's obviously things you can say, when we achieve this, then we'll do that, right? But I think if you start off with the right frame of reference around who it is and what you want to be and where you're going, it makes growth faster because people can move a lot quicker if they know that they're working within the auspices of I guess, an overarching strategy. So, if I was to think about the dozen or so things that come to my mind when I'm looking to accelerate growth, a big part of it, I think, is making sure first and foremost everybody's aligned around sort of vision and values and how they can make decisions within that construct. Because culturally, if you've got your people aligned around your vision and values and your purpose and your goals and all that sort of stuff, and you've done that work and it's been communicated, everybody should know what the North Star is and everybody should know what the boundaries are, on how you can make decisions without having to stop off and check and worry about whether they're on track, because they can know because they've got a frame of reference around what gives them structure to run fast. That'd be the first thing I'd say. I mean, there's another 10 or 12 which we can rattle off today, but if you get that piece right, culturally your business will then be able to move fast. Without it, you're going to be running back and cleaning up cultural issues that will hold back, any acceleration into growth. So that'd be the first thing I'd say to you, mate. The second thing I would say is, one of our values are living in sync, and that's all about aligning values and aligning interests, right? So making sure that you understand, and I think if you've got the best interests of your people and your business at heart, and there's alignment in that, and people know that, then you're not going to get people resisting change. Because often when you're talking about rules for big growth or big results, often you're asking people to shift and change and do things and adopt new systems and tools and whatever. And so if people don't think that you've got the best interests at heart and that you're going to get mutual benefit out of that, then you'll get resistance and that'll slow you down a lot. And there's been many times that I possibly haven't made sure that that's really clear, and I think I'm sort of well down the pathway and I've got to turn around and run backwards, and that slows me down by 6 months, and you don't know until you don't know that people aren't with you. So making sure that there is an alignment piece and people understand there's mutuality in what you do, because if it's win-lose, it'll slow you down. So that's probably the second thing I'd say. The other thing is if you're gonna move fast, making sure that people are in their right swim lanes, and we've talked about this before. Because if you've got people out there trying to do all this sort of stuff that they're not good at, or it's not their best use of their time, then again, you're going to slow yourself down. So I think one of the rules I'd say is make sure you're really clear around people's roles, responsibilities, and making sure that the person you're dealing with, you go, well, we know that some people don't like operational admin and process, right? And if you try and make them do it, you might die wondering because they just will avoid it, right?
But kind of important.
Yeah, kind of. But they might also be really good at something else. So perhaps making sure you got people in the right swim lane. So start there. The other thing is also then it's infrastructure and making sure all your operating systems and your processes enable it. Because again, you can have best intentions and good communication and good culture, but if you just don't have the operating platform to enable it, and you've talked about that a lot, if you don't have the operating platform to enable it, then you're going to be running around just picking up a lot of mess. So I'll keep going if you want, and jump in when you're ready, Josh.
The interesting thing is that I also look at removing areas of friction, and you do things for certain reasons because it might prevent overwork from having to happen later on down the track. And one of the things I've been talking to people at the moment, it's a really simple rule, 9-14. And they go, what's 9:14? I say, by day 9 you need a second appointment. By day 14 you need an offer. Now that's a really simple business philosophy, but if we've got that on track, then ultimately properties will most likely sell in and around auction day.
Yep.
And we're actually in a position that we've got like a really easy stock management tool when we're doing a meeting. I say, okay, great. Another simple rule might well be that when you walk into a meeting, what's the purpose? And I say to people, hey, a sales meeting, like what's the purpose? Is it like to make people depressed or no. The goal of the sales meeting is to help people make sales. I'm okay, great. So what's the agenda need to be to help people make sales? Is that some like good little stuff on that, it can be really complex or it can be really simple about the rules you put in play?
Well, it depends on where you're at in the business cycle too, because, you can have this helicopter view, which is really important. You've got to keep that. But right now, for example, a lot of businesses, their volumes are off. And so we're right back to we're at street view at the moment going, right, now it's all just about focusing on productivity, volume, clearing the way, and only those activities that are going to generate volume. And so that might be, so you pivot to that. And so, there are rules that apply also to different times in the market around how you'll do stuff. And if you're an agent, we all know that perhaps there are we've pivoted to the vendor motivation scorecard again. I know you had that out the other day, Josh, but it's one of those things. Like you could take on a lot of listings at the moment because you feel like you need to take on listings. But if you haven't got a motivated vendor who's prepared to get the price on it, prepared to commit to an auction, prepared to market the property properly, and so on, then you're potentially dealing with working for vendors for a lot longer than you should, and potentially no pay, and often ending up in relationships that are painful because you haven't delivered a result. So that's a rule that we would put in this sort of market. Does it need to be there in a market where the market's on the up? Potentially not. This whole furphy about off-market selling, anybody in my view right now that's putting a property off-market is actually doing a disservice to the vendor, or they're working with an unmotivated vendor because this is not the market to do that.
And again, there's rules around that if you had to do it, it's a maximum of 5 days and then it's being launched to market. But there's none of this soft listing, maybe not the agency agreement, maybe not the photos yet, maybe not the marketing. No. Everything needs to be committed. And we understand it might be a stock management flow issue, but it actually has to go to market within a minimum of X number of days. And again, that's the rules, right? Where you're saying, okay, great, here's our playbook. This is our playbook for a rising market. It's pretty good. Make sure you get plenty of listings, deal with the thousands of buyers, multi-offer situations, auction situations, big clearance rates, away we go. This is our declining market playbook. In this conversation, what are the conversations that we're having? How do we actually extract an offer? How do we actually negotiate the last $10, $20, $30, $40,000 on a deal so that then we can get the buyer confidence, give the seller confidence, and actually go back to that point of reference where you start referencing, hey, what did the seller pay for the property? What's the point of reference for what they're actually selling it for today? How much has that made them? Also, in addition to that, from a buyer's point of view, if we were listing it in January, we would have listed it at X. If we're listing it in April, we would have listed it at X. You're buying it in September, you're buying it at that level. How important, Dean, is it for people to maybe have a list of great little rules that they use for a declining market to just quickly pull back to, and great little rules that they use for a rising market that they can pull back to?
Well, the answer is simple. I mean, they do. It's super important, right? Because otherwise, you're applying the wrong discipline and the wrong practices in the wrong market. And even simple things like we've had agents drop off. The daily recommendations to a vendor around here's what I think you should do based upon the information we've just found out. And other people still not doing vendor. If you're not doing vendor reporting and making strong recommendations, like there's just simple things that I think that you can get away with in certain markets, but not in others. So you do it at your own peril. So, I think the other thing to think, Josh, about rules and what you're really talking about here is being pragmatic. There's not always one rule that applies, and there are different ways of doing things, and learning how to pivot is important, and you call it a learn it all culture, and so do we. If you have a mindset, if you think about a mindset, it's like a rule, I guess. It's about we need to learn and be pragmatic. We need to be able to adjust, because if you're not open and you're not curious, and you're not going to unlock the possibilities. But there's not. I guess the thing is, there's no one rule that sort of rules them all, right? So I think that as long as you're prepared to embrace the concept of, look, it's a volatile, uncertain, and complex and ambiguous world, Josh, VUCA world, and being prepared to listen and adapt, then I think that's an important rule too, right?
I think that's the most important conversation is there a rule that can help us here so we don't keep on making the same mistakes? And when you look at something that's really successful, why was that successful? And if there was a particular thing that you did that you can really nail the success point down because of that, then actually that's the thing that you should scale, and that's how you go to build a rule around it. And again, one of the best things that you can ever do inside of a business is a little session with your team called Broken Systems. What's the stuff that's just not working right now? And it's so good, Dean, because you see that there are things that worked really well in the past that aren't working all of a sudden. What do we need to do to adapt and change and to move that quite quickly so then all of a sudden we can get back onto that road to success pretty quickly?